All eyes are on big tech this week with Apple, Amazon, and Meta, plus Alphabet, all set to report earnings. But how will this impact ETF investors? VettaFi head of research Todd Rosenbluth joins us now to discuss. Okay, so help us break this down. I mean, with regard to some of the ETF trends that we've seen thus far, what are inflows looking like into tech sector ETFs?
Well, the technology sector has been relatively strong in 2022. We've seen over $6 billion of money go into technology ETFs. That's following on with some of the more defensive sectors. So we've seen strong inflows into consumer staples, strong inflows into utilities. Healthcare has actually been the leading sector, whereas consumer discretionary and communication services sectors have seen net outflows. And as we tie into the big tech earnings that you talked about, it really matters what ETF we're talking about and how it's classified.
Todd, where do you see investors gravitating to more specifically in the tech? Are they still staying clear of anything that owns a social media stock?
I think what the real focus for them is understanding what is inside these portfolios. So we mentioned earlier Meta and Alphabet are reporting results. Those are classified as communication services companies in many of the sector ETFs. So you would find that in XLC, which is the Communication Services Select Sector Spider ETF, but you would not find Meta or Alphabet within the Technology Select Sector Spider, which is XLK, or the Vanguard Information Technology ETF, VGT, because these sector ETFs are tied to the GICS sector framework, and S&P and MSCI classify companies like Apple and Microsoft as technology companies, like Meta and Alphabet as communication services companies. And so the devil is in the details as to what's inside these portfolios.
So with regard to all of these big tech names, it's still going to come down to what their free cash flow looks like and where they're maintaining margins within their businesses. Some of them very much advertising focused, or all of their businesses advertising, whereas some of them have a little bit more at play with regard to Amazon there. And so what would you be watching kind of throughout these tech earnings to see where they're maintaining some of those margins?
So I think the focus for all of these companies, we're likely to see the currency headwinds happen. All of these companies are multinational in nature. It's different how their exposure happens to be, but we've had a strong US dollar that is going to weigh down on overall profitability. It just comes down to how profitable they were before the currency impact. And so a company like Apple, which is again in the technology sector and part of VGT or XLK, the demand for iPhones is going to be important. A company like Meta, of course, it's tied to search. You're going to have different impact at search as well as social media. You're going to have a different impact as well. So I'm not an expert on individual companies, but I do think investors are looking to get exposure to these companies through the diversification benefits of an ETF, and they need to know what's inside those ETFs.
Todd, has anything surprised you this earnings season?
I think it's been better than we've seen and expected. I think financials has been relatively strong, and you get exposure to financials through the Financial Select Sector Spider ETF and through bank-oriented ETFs like the Spider S&P Bank ETF. I think that's been relatively strong. The bar tends to be set relatively low heading into earnings season, and companies have been exceeding that relatively low bar. But we'll see what happens. And again, ETF investors get the benefits of diversification across the sector as opposed to having to pick an individual winner heading into and after earnings season.
Do you expect that any of these companies will either revise downward their guidance or pull guidance?
I don't think I don't have the expertise to be able to dive into individual companies. But what tends to happen when companies report results, they tend to beat the expectations, and then the guidance takes a look at where we are from an economic perspective. And so the dollar is likely to continue to be strong. We're likely to see the impact of rising interest rates impact the overall economy, and a recession has been top of mind for many companies. So they're more likely to lower the bar and, again, seek to exceed that during earnings season, giving investors something else to watch beyond the current forecast, looking further into the future.
I wish you were here, Todd, because the big energy is flowing on this desk between me and Brad. We are psyched for Apple earnings. This is a big, big week of earnings. Always an exciting time for all of us. VettaFi head of research, Todd Rosenbluth. Good to see you. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.